I know it's been so long, but it's about damn time I do a top 10. Hello guys, one more time and welcome to Ring Royalty. My name is Alexis, as you already know, and I can't believe it's already August 2022 and I haven't even done one single top 10 video ever since the year started. But don't worry, I'm here to fix that. After SummerSlam 2022, that if you haven't seen my review about it, it will be over here, I felt motivated to do a video about returns. We got so many great returns this year and I'm ready to talk about the most epic 10 returns, in my book at least, from the history of WWE Women's Division. So without anything left to say, let's start with the video. To open up this list officially, let's welcome the OG diva, Sable. After suing WWE when she left in 1999, nobody expected Sable to be back in WWE at any point in her life. But in 2003, magic happened, and back then we didn't really have social media, so it was so shocking when the Wildcat team started playing during Tori Wilson's Playboy party. It was so huge to see Sable back because she was the most prominent figure of the women's division of her era, and now she will mix it up with a newer generation women like Tori Wilson, Dawn Marie, and Nydia. What's more, it was super clever to put Sable in this specific segment because she was the first WWE woman to pose for Playboy and Tori Wilson was the second one, so it made a lot of sense storyline wise. Starting a rivalry between Playboy cover girls was very nice. Sable managed to have legendary bikini contests. She was also in the best shape of her career. She also had, and this was very surprising to many, a very important storyline on SmackDown with Vince McMahon himself and Stephanie McMahon. She had many brawls and matches with Stephanie, but it was definitely so weird to see Sable in an on-screen romance angle with Vince McMahon after suing him and his company for harassment and an unsafe work environment for women. So I'm not sure what happened there, what's the agreement that they reached, but apparently Sable was doing absolutely everything she claimed she disliked from the company. That's WWE for all of you. The reason why this return made it to the list is because of the shocking value. Sable was so great, her star power was gigantic, but it was very unlikely to see her in WWE after the way she left on her first run. So this was definitely a pleasant surprise for all Sable fans, and I like to include myself in that narrative. And speaking of huge returns, another very iconic woman that returned, and it is in my number 9, it's the Black Widow AJ Lee. AJ Lee's return in 2014 was so important just because after losing the Divas Championship to Paige the Raw after WrestleMania, she went MIA. In real life, she was getting married with CM Punk, that's why she asked for some time off. But 3 months later, she came back and persuaded Paige to give her rematch clause that she contractually deserved and won the title in under 4 minutes with a small package. The crowd not only erupted when AJ Lee came back, but also when she won the title back and became a 2-time Divas champion. Nobody was mad that AJ regained the title right away just because she was probably the most important woman in the company in 2013-2014. So everybody was really happy to see her. There's no other way to explain it. The reason why this return is in my list is because the star power AJ had was super important to elevate the Divas division. She was gone and nobody really cared about Paige facing divas like Alicia Fox or Tamina, but as soon as AJ was back, all eyes were on the Divas division again. Two hot and crazy chicks fighting against one another, so that was a very clever move storyline wise. Later on the year, AJ would start a feud with the Bella Twins, becoming a 3-time Divas champion in the process, giving us great rivalries, great segments, amazing character development, and huge moments for the crowd to pop and for everyone to enjoy from our homes. So this return definitely was something else. I really like it, and this opinion is biased because AJ is one of my all-time greats, but you got to admit, for only missing 3 months of WWE programming, she received a standing ovation when she came back, and that's because people felt like AJ was necessary in WWE, and I agree with them 100%. Let's carry on this list with iconic Divas champions, because from AJ we move to spot number 8, and that is the fearless one, Nikki Bella. Nikki Bella return at SummerSlam in 2016 was fantastic just because she was told just months prior to this pay-per-view that she had to retire due to neck injury. And you know how neck injury is probably one of the most devastating injuries a wrestler can suffer. So seeing Nikki overcome that and come back at this stage, replacing Eva Marie in a 6-women tag team match, actually having a great showcase and winning the match for her team after debuting her new finisher, the Rack Attack 2.0, was such a pleasant surprise. Everyone knows I'm not the biggest Nikki Bella fan, but this was definitely a heartwarming moment for everyone. Seeing Nikki overcome all of the issues that she had and not only deliver in her return match, but also starting a feud with Carmella, a lengthy one that delivered many great matches in pay-per-views, and having the rivalry with Natalia later on, which was so fantastic and gave us amazing segments, and that Falls Count Anywhere match that everyone loves, proved that Nikki Bella was 100% ready for her in-ring return. And the value that I give to this return is mostly because of what happened behind the scenes. I know probably the 6-women tag at SummerSlam pre-show wasn't the greatest match ever, but knowing the backstory that Nikki Bella had, this deserved to be on the list. Nikki Bella was almost gone for 10 months prior to this pay-per-view appearance, so it definitely deserves kudos. Nikki Bella did that. And speaking of neck injuries, we need to talk about the Queen of Extreme in my spot number 7, and that is Lita. Lita was the first woman that we knew from WWE to break her neck. This happened back in 2002 when she was a stunt double for the TV show Dark Angel, and it was so anticlimactic and shocking to see Lita being sidelined by something that didn't have anything to do with WWE itself. She was on the shelf for over a year, and we thought that Lita's career was over just because it was a neck injury, and that's something that we had no information about in that time. Fortunately, we were all wrong, and after a handicap match where Gail and Molly Holly defeated Trish Stratus and started a post-match attack on the Blonde, Lita came back to save Trish and did all of her signatures and finishers on both Molly and Gail. From a powerbomb to a DDT, twist of fate, Lita was on fire. Saving Trish Stratus was a nice way to reintroduce Lita into WWE programming, and later they had a tag team match at the Unforgiven pay-per-view where Trish and Lita defeated Molly Holly and Gail Kim. But if you thought Lita was not ready 100%, she was ready to prove all of us wrong. Not only she had that tag team match, but later on she started a women's championship feud against Molly Holly, delivering a fantastic match against her at Survivor Series, but she also had the first ever steel cage match against Victoria on Raw, and not content with that, at Armageddon she teamed up with Stratus again to face Chris Jericho and Christian in the first ever Battle of the Sexes match. Can you believe Lita did all of that in the span of 4 months after returning from neck surgery? That's ludicrous, and this is one of the reasons why it pissed me off. Lita never receives the credit that she deserves for being one of the pillars of the women's division during the golden era of WWE, and I'm going to give that recognition to her right now. Lita, you are truly the GOAT, and you deserve all the kudos in the world for this performance and for everything that you accomplished in 2003. This has to be one of the best returns ever, not only the moment, but everything that happened after it. Lita did that. Let's keep talking about redheads, because at spot number 6 we have big time Becky Lynch. In 2021 at SummerSlam, Bianca Belair was scheduled to face Sasha Banks for the SmackDown Women's Championship, but Sasha never appeared, and that's when Becky Lynch came out, and it was so shocking to see Becky Lynch return from maternity leave. The last time we saw her, she relinquished the Raw Women's Championship, giving it to Asuka in that very heartwarming moment, but this time the mind came around to become a champion once again. This has to be a very bittersweet return, at least for me. I think it should have been higher, but I'm gonna tell you why it isn't right now. Becky Lynch defeating Bianca for the SmackDown Women's Championship could have been great. I had no problems with that. She is such a big superstar, and putting the title on Becky is logical. The way that they did it was my problem. Lynch beating Belair in 26 seconds after a cheap shot and a manhandle slam definitely didn't sit well for me. I wasn't content with it. I believe Becky was a last minute replacement, so I understand that maybe there wasn't enough time to plan a match, or Becky wasn't still in physical condition to have a lengthy match, but maybe just an attack at SummerSlam could have been enough, and having the title match later on would have benefited both of them a little bit more. I understood that the crowd had a thunderous reaction for Becky Lynch when she came out, but there was a mixed reaction when she won the title just because of the way it happened. That's the only reason why Becky Lynch's return isn't higher on my list. But I do think From the mom to the man, now to big time Bex, Becky Lynch really delivered. She's so great, and after winning the SmackDown Women's Championship, she had a lengthy title reign with it, and then became a Raw Women's Champion and had another lengthy title reign, delivering matches and especially promos. I know whether I like her or not, this return will be something that people will talk about in years to come. So it was definitely something important in women's wrestling history and one of the greatest returns, so congratulations to Becky. But let's stay at SummerSlam for a little bit because I want to talk about 2022, the return of Dakota Kai, Io Shirai or Io Sky, and Bayley. That was something that snatched my wig off immediately. And there are two reasons why this set of returns is so high on my list. The first one is because it is one of the few times that we have seen a faction being formed, and the first time that we see a faction being formed on a pay-per-view. And the second reason is because in this set of returns we had a woman that wasn't even under WWE contract because she was released a couple months before the pay-per-view. I just can't believe Dakota Kai was released and out of nowhere she was brought back in one of the biggest stages in WWE. SummerSlam, the biggest party of the summer. This was huge, and this has to be something that came from Triple H and Stephanie McMahon's brains, because if Vince McMahon was still in charge, we could have never ever gotten this moment. So thank you, Trips and Steph. You're doing so well leading the WWE to new horizons. The team we know now as Control had a great reception from the crowd. Them facing Bianca Belair, who is at the top of the Raw Women's division, was a great move, and I think what they're gonna do with Control is the same thing that happened in NXT with Toxic Attraction. I can definitely see Io Sky and Dakota Kai becoming the WWE Women's Tag Team Champions. I also think they are the reason why this tournament started, because they won Dakota and Io as champions, and also Bayley would face Bianca, and I believe at some point would take the Raw Women's Championship from her. I'm convinced that we're going to have a female bloodline storyline with these three, and I couldn't be happier. With Dakota being released and brought back, Io being MIA since WrestleMania weekend, coming back out of nowhere to the main roster, and Bayley being out with an injury for over a year and leading a new stable, all the pieces were put perfectly together so we could have this amazing moment at SummerSlam 2022. I'm really looking forward to see what Control is going to do on Raw, and I am really hoping that they win not all the gold, but at least the tag team championships, so we can see that division re-emerge from the ground. Please, I'm begging for a tag team division in the women's side. Let's go back in time for number 4, and I'm choosing Jazz. Jazz had one of the most dominant returns for a female in WWE history. She came back to WWE Raw on January 2003 after a Chicago street fight between Victoria and Trish Stratus. She was ready to get some payback on the blonde because she was injured during a match with Stratus 6 months prior to this moment, and she also lost the championship to her in the same match. Jazz was pissed off and she demolished Trish Stratus in a way we haven't really seen anyone do it before. Jazz was booked so strong in this return that she was really intimidating even to me. I was a kid when I was watching that match, and oh my god, like, it made me feel uncomfortable to see that beatdown. Everything that she did on Stratus was perfect because it made sense. She had all this rage accumulating inside her and she unleashed it on Stratus. Ever since returning, Jazz became a beast that was ready to demolish every woman in the Raw Women's division until she regains her championship. This set a triple threat match at WrestleMania for the women's title, where Victoria and Trish Stratus were facing Jazz. Trish won the bout, but not long after, Jazz won the title from Stratus just a pay-per-view later in Backlash. It is so awesome to see how dominant Jazz was actually booked back in 2003. It was so difficult to see who was going to dethrone her because she was at the top of her game. And the reason why this return is so high is not only the devastation that she caused during that segment, but all the path of destruction that she built months after it. Such a great return and one of my favorites of all time. Speaking about dominating returns, at number 3, I have to choose the boss, Sasha Banks. Another dominating return, this time in 2019, The Boss came back during Natalia's speech talking about her father passing away. We haven't seen The Boss ever since losing the tag team titles at WrestleMania. She hugged Natalya and then she smacked the hell out of her face, turning heel in the process and having this Hannah Montana moment where she took off her wig and we realized that she was no purple hair Sasha anymore. The blue was in, the purple was out. Such a badass move. It helped with the character development of this new persona. Beating the hell out of Natalya in Canada was so savage, and people actually chanting "Thank you, Sasha" was even more savage. Sometimes the crowd has no chills. The best part was that Raw Women's Champion at the time, Becky Lynch, came for the save, but she couldn't do anything because Sasha was on Saiyajin mode. She beat the hell out of Becky Lynch with several chair shots, establishing that she was ready to become the next Raw Women's Champion, and Sasha just looks so fantastic in this segment that it has to be up there with the best ones. She is such a huge superstar and she proved that in this segment alone. She also gave Becky Lynch her most important rivalry during her Raw Women's Championship reign, having two amazing title matches, the first one at Clash of Champions and the second one in that monumental Hell in a Cell match. The reason why I'm choosing this return this high is because the showcase that Sasha received and the reception from everyone was just on point. It was picture perfect. And the fact that Sasha was the heel but she was still cheered when she destroyed Natalya in her hometown country, and also when a lot of people were cheering for Sasha to become the Raw Women's Champion against Becky Lynch, just tells everyone how big Sasha Banks is and how beloved she also is by the WWE Universe. I just love Sasha and this has to be one of my favorite returns hands down, and it will still be one of my favorite returns in many years. It was so perfect. At number 2, I'm choosing a return that made me cry when I was a kid because of the way she left the first time that she was in WWE, and I'm talking about Candice Michelle. Candice Michelle definitely had the scariest injury in women's wrestling history when she broke her collarbone, and everybody was so in shock because she looked dead in the middle of the ring. There was absolutely no information given after Candice Michelle left with an injury or if she would be able to come back at some point. Almost a year after this horrific moment, Candice Michelle came back to participate in a 6-diva tag team match, interrupting a promo for the champion at the time, Beth Phoenix. And it is so great because the storytelling once again was perfect here. Beth was the one that injured Candice Michelle, and now she was interrupting Beth and facing her in this tag team match. Match that Candice Michelle actually won by pinning Beth Phoenix with a small package, showing her collarbone at some point, saying that she was back full force and that she wanted her title back. This moment just warms my heart so much. I just can't control my emotion. And for me it was like a full circle moment because Candice Michelle lost the Women's Championship at No Mercy 2007, and this revitalized feud ended at No Mercy 2008, exactly a year after Candice Michelle lost the title to Beth Phoenix. They had their title bout, which was fantastic, no ring rust whatsoever on Candice Michelle's part, and despite not winning the championship, she proved everyone how much she loved this business and how passionate she actually was for it. She broke her collarbone twice, and it was so great to see that Candice Michelle was still willing to come back and face her fears. She even did top rope maneuvers when she didn't really have to, but she wanted to prove everyone that she was there to stay. I've seen so many times Candice Michelle receiving a lot of hate and being underappreciated by the women's wrestling community, and I think nobody remembers or realizes how big Candice Michelle's passion for wrestling actually was. And I am going to give her once again her recognition here in this video. I love Candice Michelle's return and I wouldn't have it any other way. For me, she should have won the title one more time, but it wasn't meant to be, apparently. However, that doesn't discredit how awesome her return was and how great her rivalry with Beth Phoenix in 2008 was as well. Before I go to my number 1 spot, I want to talk about some honorable mentions that I had. The only reason why they aren't included on the official list is because I'm talking about Royal Rumble returns, and we know that the hype usually fades away pretty quick. The first runner-up was Naomi returning at the Royal Rumble 2020. The reception that she received was fantastic. She disappeared out of nowhere from WWE programming, but when she came back, she did it in the best way possible. Her interactions with Bianca Belair and Charlotte Flair were fantastic. Having that Kofi Kingston-like spot on the Royal Rumble was also nice. So I think it had to be mentioned at some point in this video. And another Royal Rumble return that I thought was fantastic happened in 2012, and that was Karma returning to participate in the Men's Royal Rumble match, eliminating Michael Cole and Unico, and also delivering an implant buster to Dolph Ziggler are some of the highlights that she did, and that was her only official WWE match during her time with the company. So it has to be mentioned also. It was a historic moment. And we're finally here at the top of the mountain. I think it is pretty obvious who will be my #1 pick, but if not, let me clear the air. I'm talking about the anti-diva Paige. The way that Paige returned in 2017 for me was epic. The most epic return in women's wrestling history. She also gave us that iconic phrase, "I'm back," which became a meme for everyone in the women's wrestling community. Looking in hindsight to Paige's life in 2017, it was a complete mess. From neck injuries to a very toxic relationship with Alberto Del Rio, it was so unlikely to see Paige back in the WWE ring at any point, but she managed to return on November 2017 on an additional Raw, interrupting a fatal 4-way #1 contenders match. She would be joined by NXT call-ups Sonya Deville and Mandy Rose, forming the team Absolution. We have talked about so many returns now and the fantastic reception that they all got, but this by far was the loudest pop from the crowd ever. Paige made everyone go nuts. Paige's new team definitely shook up the entire Raw Women's division, and not content with that, later in the night they destroyed the Raw Women's Champion at the time, Alexa Bliss, in the backstage area. Such a huge statement, a very well planned, well thought, and a well executed return not only for Paige but the debuting Mandy and Sonya. Unfortunately, her return was short-lived. We all know how she got injured only a couple months after her return. However, that doesn't discredit how awesome the moment was, and that definitely was one of the milestones, one for the ages moments that we got in the women's division. We also got the chance to see Paige interact with some women she had never worked with in the past as well. Women like Sasha Banks, Bayley, Mickie James, Nia Jax, and Alexa Bliss. Paige's career ended in such an abrupt way, but now that she's released from WWE and she's been giving some interviews, she's been teasing an in-ring return if she has the right opponent and it happens at the right time. So fingers crossed that we can see another Paige return, and this time around we can see her full force and full time back in a wrestling ring. So let's summarize all of this, because Paige's return, in my book, was the most epic one in women's wrestling history in WWE. Alright, so this was my top 10 of the best and most epic women's returns in WWE history. Like I told you at the beginning of the video, let me know in the comments what do you think about my list, and also give me your own list, because I am pretty curious to see if we have similar or different opinions. I'm pretty sure that we're not done with the women's returns in WWE. 2022 looks like a bright year for women's wrestling now that Triple H and Stephanie McMahon are in charge. I'm still waiting to see Candice LeRae back probably, and I'm pretty sure Naomi and Sasha Banks are coming back at some point during this Women's Tag Team Championship tournament. It's time to wait and see what's gonna happen, but low-key, it's something that is bound to happen. My name is Alexis, as you already know. Here is my Instagram if you want to contact me or anything, and I will see you guys next time. Stay safe. Goodbye.